right. Good morning. All right, so we start with Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga and then Refuge in Bodhicitta. From the heart of the sever of the 100 deities of the Shita, on a peak of cloud resembling clump of extremely white fresh curd, King of Dharma on Nisan Lawson Drakpa, please come here together with your sons. In the sky before me on a lion throne, lotus and moon, my perfect pure Guru smiles with delight. Supreme fill of merit for my mind of faith, please abide for 100 eons to spread the teachings. Your holy mind is the intelligence that understands the full extent of objects to be known. Your holy speech with its excellent explanations is an ear ornament of those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful with glory renowned. To you are meaningful to see, hear, and remember are prostrate. Pleasant drink of water, various flowers, fragrant incenses, light-scented waters, and so forth. Oceans of cloud-like offerings, both actually arranged and mentally emanated. I offer to you the supreme field of merit. Whatever non-virtue of body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite to the three vows that I've collected from beginning this time, I confess each and every one with fervent regret from my heart. You strive for much learning and practicing in this degenerate age and made your freedoms and richnesses meaningful by abandoning the 8 worldly concerns. Savior, we sincerely rejoice in your extensive deeds. Perfect, pure, holy gurus from the billion clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dhammakaya, please let fall a rain of fun and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued exactly as they need. May whatever virtue I ever collected benefit the teachings and all transmigrated beings, and in particular may it cause the essence of perfect, pure Lawson Drakpa's teachings to shine forever. Sa-shi po-ki ju-shi-me-to Ram-ri-ram-ling-shi Ni-de-gen-pa-de Sangye-shindu Mikte-o-wa Gir-do-ku-nam-da Shila Chupachu. For the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Tsongkhapa and his 2 sons, may I, my family members, all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one, Lawson Drakpa, with the morality of eminently pure way of life, was courageous in the extensive conduct of the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplish the yoga of 2 stages of supreme bliss and emptiness. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyataya. But the force of having fervently requested in this way, all of winds of white light are emitted from the hearts of the perfect pure Father and Sons, and combining into one enter my crown. White nectar, the color of milk, flows from the opening of tube of white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and the imprints without exception. My body becomes as pure and clear as crystal. Mi mete wete chen chen vezi, jime kembe wambo jampe an, dupo malu jonze sanwe da, kanchen kebe tsungen tsonga pa, losandra be shambla sowa de, mi mete wete chen chen vezi, jime kembe wambo jampe an, dupo malu jonze sanwe da, kanchen kebe tsungen tsonga pa, losandra be shambla sowa de, mi mete wete chen chen vezi, jime kembe wambo jampe an, Dubo malu jonze sanweda, kanche kembe tsungen songa pa, lo sandra pe shabla soa de.
Sangi Chudan Soji Chonla Chanchu Bardu Dani Kapsuch Dagi Chishi Gibon Dagi Rola Benji Sangi Rubara Sho Sangi Chudan Soji Chonla Chanchu Bardu Dani Kapsuch Dagi Chishi Gibon Dagi Rola Benji Sangi Rubara Sho Sangi Chudan Soji Chonla Chanchu Bardu Dani Kapsuch Dagi Chishi Gibon Dagi Roland Benji Sangi Rubara Sho Kangi Tudini Zone, Tava Tamchi Bambi Sher, Tambi Chun Dinzi, Quadam Kela Chanzelo. Good morning, everyone. Something.
No.
Something. Sajidi lost in research.
Presidente de det attende da Johnson Jugal love dear one.
The cousin and some georos. Some tea.
Yeah, constantly passing through.
Then contradict Tolia. And Chanchu Sembi Jabal Laguris Laundi. Denti. Then Tetavi, Chanchu Jabal Lobanas, Chanchu Chavan News said it. Randa Shingi Tendribos. Then Shendun Dribala, Thomas Sansinki Pento Gola, Tela Sunjala Nusetan Chibi, Jimbi Jian Minkivi, Shendu Shijili Leber Dombani, Shendun Chembo Yimbi, Tsudum Gosos.
So we're going to pick up from the point that we left off in the previous session. We're looking at a section that explains the way to train. It's the beginning of the section that explains the way to train in the 6 perfections, the practice of bodhisattvas. We're now looking at an explanation why the number of the perfection was set as 6. So in picking up the point that we left off in the previous session, we're now going to look at the number as specified from the point of view of the accomplishment of the 2 welfares. So it says when you train in bodhisattva conduct with such a life. So we spoke before about this basis, this working basis that we have now. So when we train in bodhisattva conduct with such a life, there are only 2 types of bodhisattva activities. Those that accomplish one's own welfare, and those that accomplish the welfare of others.
Teresa, Chidan Siuresha Sira, the Inaya, and the Siwi Inaya, something like P. Kitchen Budrojing, Zinchi Matuana, then he Tushun Roshach, Yungrosra, Penangando, Tushun Royaj, Yungrosra.
So this section is important, and sometimes we overlook the importance of a section like that. And when we overlook the importance of a section such as this, then there are quite a few points that are left outside of the scope of our understanding. It happens to all of us, and Geshe said that it also happens to him.
The Namju Nganzogi in the Lamrim, the Lamrim Ma Chadandro, the Tambupi, any Tarjin Georgian Ludenti. Tanjun Nika Celalome said Titola Jarondi, any Nikawati, Gugoni Nikasu, Lutera, Kasana, and it's Tsultrim Songogres. On the unit Tsultrim Leshimes. The 2 my cheondi, and it's Tsultrim de 아니 란딩 체드로 라 란이 피게 아 온도 토비야 주 츠름디 지 란딩 미미 츠름 송구기 위해서는 삼삼들이 연구를 왔어라.
And so here in this presentation of the states of the path of enlightenment, we've looked before at the section that explains the appreciation of the current human life that we have, human life that is endowed with 10 sets of 10 opportunities or richnesses and the 8 states of freedoms. We understand how it is of great advantage, how hard it is to obtain such a precious human rebirth, and how easy it is to lose it. There's no time to waste. So when we look at how hard it is to find such meaningful rebirth with freedoms and richnesses, it is explained from different perspectives. Like, for example, looking at it from the viewpoint of the causes which are required in order to secure a precious human rebirth with freedoms and richnesses, we understand how hard it is to gather the causes producing such a life. So amongst those causes, the very basis for those causes, the foundation, is to guard pure ethical discipline. As Chandrakirti said in his supplement to the Milway, there is nothing higher, nothing better than guarding ethical discipline for higher states of rebirth as a human being or as God. So then when we think of the import of this statement and the importance of guarding pure ethical discipline in order to obtain a good human rebirth, it seems that it is the guarding of ethics is mainly oriented towards one's own welfare.
들이 내 임바이느야 단자다 장관로 무슨 거 침비 저소 파시 죽을 자니 야식 접을 럽수 송온디 드니 다 수좀디 셴든 주발이야 라니 원도 다다미 컴포터위알다 임바치 주 아니 야스 창조 선비 아니 셴든 주비게다 지 차게 연나 면나디 아니 수좀 임바디 은 송구도 하서라 이베 배야고도스라 나라는 배야고도스다.
And so often we regard ethics to be something that we guard, that we practice for our own welfare in order to attain a precious human rebirth. But then when you look at the way that Lama Tsongkhapa explains that here, it says that, of course, we guard ethics for our own sake, for our own welfare. But when you look at ethics from the viewpoint of the 6 perfections, the practices of bodhisattvas, then the guarding of ethical discipline is done for the sake of others. In order to accomplish the welfare of others, we need ethical discipline. It's a really good point.
들이 더 디나노라야 다 셴누 시동 지질리 레버 동반이 셴든 첨부임베스라 다 셴든 첨부 학든도 다 뒤 대상자오지 임바이나다 로 안주지 아니 가서 다 미시기야게 차긴 아니 차긴 비부베 차브 갑둘라 아니 비기다지 오보 야게 땅야라야 아니 베 아니 세 통불레온디 아니 다 셴라야 느치징기 자원몽부 쇼식 라 자원몽부 쇼식 레고라스 딘자 다 딘디 갑둘라야 지 셴라야 만네바 제투나 다 약슈디 라 디렌도스라 다 셴라 만네바 치나 다 딜리 셴드 야가지 다 mendoasra 딘자 아니 수점 생인디 웅 가르르슬라디 셴라 무슨야 파샤니 네버 용약이 시코라네 베 아니 동바징인기 다 릉아 군주 딘디질이야 다 수점 세그레스라.
So our text, the Middling Lamrim by Lama Tsongkhapa, says, specifically in order to accomplish the welfare of others, it is necessary first to benefit them with material gifts. Since generosity accompanied by harm to sentient beings lead to nothing, it is itself of great benefit to others to completely turn away from actions that harm others together with their basis. Which means that particularly when we consider that the present time nowadays, when we enjoy a life with such good conditions, such great material progress, so many things that we do, particularly at this point in time, are involved with harming others. And so thinking of what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying here with respect to guarding ethical discipline, well, if we can act, in particularly at this point in time, act, but in a way in which we abstain from harming others, that would be, first of all, an excellent thing, but you can say that there is nothing better or higher than that in terms of being of benefit to others or working for the sake of others, at least acting in a way in which we abstain from harming others. So here, Lama Tsongkhapa speaks of ethical discipline in the following way. It says that it is of great benefit to others to completely turn away from actions that harm others, not only to turn away from harming others, but also with the foundation, the basis for harming others.
데르다 딘자 nganzuda pigi chanjuk semda tongni ki ko menaya sosu gi nimachi ya lunga yisum gi chawa khang chebadi 직 shenla manwa chik chegwa samya gi samu chiya ba na tadi shendwe ren do asra chanju sembi nyamne yakshu chik tadi tsudum dire do asra hinza ani di tula shagwa be kichem go ta dindi chiya ba na ani gyasi chanju sembi nyamne tina su dewa ani chi kewa chemal mondo hada mi kombo to ye gyu ani tsudum gi nyamne telele dewa chik di yungu do asra dadi me ba na ani sozu lega khan cheba di ani chi shenla ya nöya gi shicha zhugu yo ba na teni da khani gar den ba yin da gar she ba yin da ani khagbu re do asra.
And so when we look at ourselves, if we haven't developed an understanding of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, and an understanding of emptiness, at least if we can abstain from harming others in our physical, verbal, and mental actions, that would be a mode of behavior that is for the welfare of others, for the sake of others, even if we don't have a lot of understanding of bodhicitta and emptiness. And this is really important to keep that in mind. And if we do so, if we behave in a way in which we abstain from harming others physically, verbally, mentally, then not only we will be engaging in the bodhisattva conduct, the bodhisattva behavior, but also on top of that, we'll be creating causes for a good status rebirth as a human being or as a god in our next lifetime. So if the way that we act is detrimental to others, it is harmful to others, we'll not be keeping in line or with the spirit of these practices.
Redinza dindige that surum di tarchimba layans sur ne mazoba chiglenda nilen chena surum tabo moes and it's sunla chiminin be sobogosos.
The next Lama Tsongkhapa says, therefore ethics are necessary. However, those pure ethics cannot come about if you are unable to bear being harmed and you retaliate once or twice. So to perfect ethics, it is necessary to have the patience in the face of harm that thinks it does not matter.
That di pigi di karso that song di melon tawlaya shani and susulaya shuda chej redasra kansana manzu susula na mandrovach namgyurtayari sigma yari chik dindi jilebayna and lamsang pa and len lawyer and sig dugja lavya and zemsun zawni mebiton and sig dindi page chet and dosra and so that's so rabshon ji sambayna and dindi to the lay in chimchik ro and it's trum song in ji samguyabana 인지미다 상당과의 레도 아스라
So it says here, so to perfect ethics, it is necessary to have the patience that in the face of harm things, it does not matter. So in that sense, kind of when we can use this mode of formulation to be like assessing our own reflection when we look at the mirror in order to make sure that our appearance is correct, or in order to work up on that personal appearance, at least when we think of how we, for example, behave when someone does something that we dislike or says something that is unpleasant. When they do something that we dislike, if we immediately respond to that, we retaliate, we do not get patience, well, it means that we do not keep up with this practice, particularly if we, for example, for those of us who have chosen to go forward, which means take ordination, when we look at the way that we then behave, we can assess whether we got our ethical discipline and also whether we got patience when we look at the way that we respond to situations and evaluate them according to the teachings Lama Tsongkhapa gives here.
제 디니 칼송도서는 디렌 마체베스 술래야 네버치바텔래야 아니 소보곰니 파렌 마체바이나 아니 생기 딕속바 도마 케시 디니 게발라 조르디에비 신든 쳔보스라다 아 짐바타야 수dum소야 아니 소보곰야 디다 신든라야 로단디
And so Jerenpo Lama Tsongkhapa says, so to perfect ethics, it is necessary to have the patience that in the face of harm thinks it does not matter, patience that does not pay heed to harm inflicted upon you. And since your patience prevents you from retaliating, you then prevent others from accumulating a lot of bad actions. Inspired by that, they will then apply themselves to virtue. Thus, it is of great benefit to others, which means that here Lama Tsongkhapa first off explains the practice of the three initial perfections, generosity, ethics, and patience, as practices that we use for the welfare of others.
데리다 다 진소파신 죽디 다 진소파신 죽기 원의 첸다 송구열에서 진소파신 죽송디게 아니 셔럽디 쪼라샤지 아니 셔럽디 피게다 또 아니 남들 토비기 탑니 초드기 와서는도 남들 토발아야 바르도 주지기 아니 뉴문비 우지 님보디 셔럽인자 아니 뉴문비 우지 님볼아야 드퉁이기 셔럽 깨바 쳐발아야 아니 다 짐바츠도 소보존리 삼된라서 고그레스 디송라스라 양한다다 탐지는 팀비 셔럽 텐도 송슬라원디 아니 저소파시 두기 원르체 이나니 셔럽 비기다 드브잘라 샤체니 아니 셴가디 아니 셔럽 드비 타블야 아니 송바인자 아니 디 원르체니 저소파시 두 송구였으레스라.
So keep in mind that this explanation that Lama Tsongkhapa gives here is an explanation from the viewpoint of the practice of the six perfections. And the practice of the six perfections is oriented towards, at the end, generating wisdom. So the main out of the six perfections is the perfection of wisdom. And we practice the perfection of wisdom for the sake of attaining complete liberation. And to attain complete liberation, we need the main antidote to the things that obstruct us from attaining complete liberation. And the main antidote, the actual antidote to that, is wisdom. Just as Shantideva said at the beginning of the wisdom chapter in his Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, all these branches, which means all the previous perfections that Shantideva spoke of in his Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, all these branches were taught for the sake of generating wisdom. And so when we think of the six perfections, beginning with generosity, so generosity, ethics, patience, and so forth, all of them are methods for accomplishing wisdom.
이래 저당기 야세 chanjusen bi choba lai lawandi jinso phajin chugi segiyosa mares jinso phajin dün tinam gi tengumunda manda jinso phajin dünsi gumbuludugi yache yatamba jinso phajin düngi ani namsha chen songshas ro jimba Tsultrim soba zongju samden sherab ani ninjida chanjusen chigdani ani tsewi parshensi ani odindigi pigita omarinchen tame namla sibu shush lugus ro.
And so in general, these six are taken to be the six practices, six perfections for the bodhisattva conduct. But then sometimes, or in some texts, you find a reference to a seventh perfection. So rather than just speaking of the sixth perfection, Geshe cannot recall the actual source, but it's likely that Nagarjuna in his writing referred to the seven perfections. So we have the six that we familiar with, so generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, absorption, and wisdom. And then for the seventh one, it lists down compassion combined with bodhicitta, which means the perfection of love.
Di chidan jinso phajin chugdi ani chanjusen bi nyamlen chu dün shebares chu dom gyabayna jinso phajin chugnand dugri sonjara samli yabu tangwayna gyase chanjusen bi chobala labya di simjan tamji gi chedu sangi tobigi ani chedu da gyase chanjusen bi chobala goras sangi tobigi tabdi tabshini 들어와 tabshini nani tabzodi zewaninji chembe kunellambi chanju semdi tab다 tab yonamen adres ani sherab tombani to sherab da dinza ani dom gyawondi tabshini nala injimi ndigoda a ta tabshini nan diwondi jimba Tsultrim zoba zongri samdeng nala ya zewaninji chembe shichibi chanju semdi duya this kaburoji yeson this kaburoji jidando du chogo igirda ina yarwa.
And so we say that all the different activities that bodhisattvas undertake, all of them are subsumed in the six perfections. They are included within the six perfections. And the practice of the six perfections is undertaken for the sake of attaining the state of Buddhahood for all sentient beings. So to attain the state of Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, we need all these bodhisattva activities, bodhisattva practices, but the summation of them is method and wisdom. We need both method and wisdom. And the main method that often we speak of is the method of bodhicitta, which is rooted in great compassionate love. And of course, the wisdom aspect is the wisdom of emptiness. So since the main method that is required is bodhicitta, which is rooted in great compassionate love, but how do we fit then the six, or at least the initial five perfections into them? So we have generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, and absorption. It seems that it would be hard to fit all of them within the method bodhicitta, the main method bodhicitta, rooted in great compassionate love. Of course, no, you can find ways to do it. If you look at it from different perspective, you will find ways to include it within the mind of enlightenment. And yet, when you think about it, sometimes it's not an easy thing to answer.
Tanda umarinchen chamagi tado chere dilya kariyorsati pigi jimbe longchu timki te soben dande sembeje soben dande gewiji songsha umarinchen chamnaro gewiji samdin chishi samdin ki pigi ta sem chingoli shichin techik ne badin gores sherabki ani troto gores 힌지위는 된건드스 힌지위는 된건드스 돈본드다 탐제니 찌제 파르치마인스 드 디란샤스 직드 콘절 직된나
타탈에.
아 타타라말 타니야 쇼 이변인지부터 용거라다 베스부터라 인지위는 된건드 돈본드다 탐제니 찌제 파르치마인스
In, let's see if I can find the text. Anyway, can't find it now. Geshe said in Nagarjuna's Precious Garland of the Middle Way, he gives a summation of the 6 perfections and why they are needed. So he says from generosity, you find resources. From ethics, it says happiness, what it means, happy state of rebirth or a pleasant state of rebirth. From patience, you have an attractive or beautiful appearance. The Tsundru, the jet.
give it
Yeah.
아니 zigzag tembachi
So from Joseph, you find splendor. From absorption, you find peace or pacification, and what is pacified are mental laxity and mental excitation, which are hindrances for developing a concentrated mind. So from absorption, you have peace or pacified mind, and from wisdom, you have liberation, a liberated mind. So these 6 need to be accomplished for affecting the welfare of both oneself and others. Dila tatala di dun.
인지위는 된건드스 인지와
Right.
아니 돈보스 드
Ningsawa ning tatsen.
인지와디 인지와 인지점불라고라
And then he had to that in the end of this section, it says, and together with compassion, compassionate love, these are the 7.
들다 디지리게 고물루두게 진소 파친 든 아니 오마린 젠타면 나올라야 세부슈 진 송샤와티 아니 진주게다 케비 안보초게 툭툭툭툭 칼진 송고레스 din 칼진 송고 말이세 당하샤는 데도 절단 소소 독처실 되거스라 그래서 배 아니 지와디 나로지는 지와배 지와 첨부로 저래 되셨어 고물루두게 아니 산지 공바 신지말로바 장인디다 고물루두라 롱템 산지 공바 신지말로바 텐라방인다 겨라니기 롱템상이 겨 첨부디 고물루두 더 콩기 든디스 which 여바디 아니 진주기 아니 불럽남기 가르치니 툭툭툭 라바레스 라간다디 트와레샤스라.
All right, so I find this verse. It says, from giving there arises wealth, from ethics, happiness, from patience, a good appearance, from effort in virtue, brilliance or splendor, from concentration, peace, from wisdom, liberation, and from compassion, that's the 7th one, all aims are achieved. So one thing that is missing from this translation is that when you list something in Tibetan language, often you also mention how many numbers are there in the list. How many things, what's the number of things that are listed down. So the verses Geshe recited kind of said at the end, these are the 7. So then it brings up a question. When you read text by those great masters, great experts, most of them are referring to the perfections as the 6 perfections. So it's commonplace. It is all over the scriptural tradition that there are 6 perfections. And yet here, Nagarjuna in this precious scholar says that these are the 7th. So why is this point overlooked? Why is it that still everyone speaks of the 6 perfections rather than the 7th one that includes compassion, compassionate love?
Di danda di sik di kong de la ro. Anda di sik di kong la kar yas na. Jin da Tsultrim zu zong de. Samden sherap la soks la. Rinchen tam na ro. Sok kong sok sa di gi chik dugo res la da. Sok doya di ani nin tse wa de sha go da. Kansa shugula di gi ani kansa chele da mas na deshi gya on di nin tse we tyengun ru res. Ani dombo da tamchi 직절도 파르디 치만도 그랬어.
이 칸라 속는 지 라그르베.
이 강라여. 진짜 추추즈 좀디 something share lasso.
And before that, Nagarjuna says briefly the good qualities observed by bodhisattvas are giving, ethics, patience, effort, concentration, wisdom. So these are the 6 perfections that we know of. It says compassion and so forth. So it does include compassion and so forth as things or as practices which are observed by bodhisattvas.
이르다 다임바이나야 갸스 첨부 시월라기에 양란드다 탐제는 튼비셔를 편도 송스로 제소 파신 죽마 시온데 점부 수tum서 버존데 쌈디 시니 이 탐제 시에디 아니 톰바산지 좀 된디기 비기다 지 셔럽 라보시 지기야체 레송디 다디 아니 양성을 땅서 지 요레스로 죽시야디 그 아니 시 비기다 셔럽디 아니 템부지 용약체도 아니 저소 탐봉아디 셰버레스 다 셔럽 기토기 아니 저소 탐봉아디 셰버레스.
And yet still Shantideva says at the beginning of his wisdom chapter in the first verse in the 9th chapter, all these branches were taught for the sake of generating wisdom, for the sake of wisdom. So Shantideva said that in teaching the 6 perfections. So he spoke of the initial 5 perfections that are needed for the 6th one, for the perfection of wisdom. They are needed for generating stable wisdom. For them, these 5 are needed. So there's still something to gain. There's something that you can gain by thinking of why Shantideva in his text presents the perfections as 6. Not only that, saying that the first 5 are necessary for generating wisdom.
Dirida namju chanju sambi ani ombud numbuki ani pi ngondo jiwe rimbasondi 당부 동반이 또니 되니 인지기그레스 소요레스 딘자 아니 셔럽라보치지 준투바이나 디 이토기 다 인지 낭기 게용고요 반자 아니 믹스기 아니 인지기 출디 비기 domgeon디 다 마손나 디그레스 인지 삼단 초 페시 초고이기레스라.
And so when you think about it, it is possible to think about it in the following way. So there are different types of bodhisattvas. Some of them are regarded as sharp faculties bodhisattvas. And the stages of developing clear realizations for those bodhisattvas is first off, they realize emptiness. And then having realized emptiness, they develop compassion. Which means that if the wisdom that you develop is a powerful wisdom, the powerful wisdom will induce compassion to others. It will naturally arise if you have powerful wisdom. And therefore, from the point of view of the presentation of the sixth perfection, now one thing that you can think of is that since it emphasizes the generation of wisdom, and if you do generate wisdom, it's a powerful wisdom, then patience anyway will naturally, sorry, not patience, compassion anyway will naturally arise.
예, 다 yang pigi jimba da Tsultrim songdi, jimba digi, ane rang yo kang yobati, shen la ya tang ya ti, ro pigi da jik chakpa mebi toni, ro senna mebi toni, shen la tang ya ti. Teda ane Tsultrim gi shen la nyoba shida jeba, shen la nyoba shida jeba dong yong digi, tengi dong bigi topgi, ane ninji nyamlen di 상극을 쓰려나 양 고집 초고설이스라.
And so when we think of the first two perfections, so we have the perfection of generosity and the perfection of ethics. First off, with generosity. So with generosity, you give to others whatever you have without attachment, without miserliness. You give it to others. With ethics, we abstain from harming others on the basis of that harm. And so we can say that compassion is completely found within those practices. Okay, if you think about it, that can be said.
간지 상로 단으로 상로 슈 단, 지소 파신 죽드만 장가 잡지. 안 디나라야 뒤츠 뒤단 아니 파신 죽 샤고야 균세 안 뒤츠 돌아 상담에다 곰 세나 약시 디차고서레스. 아니 냠렌세나 약시 uti라 또 스바치 수수 셈디 아니 진소 파신 쪽이 냠렌다 파칭 제트바이나 근데 디 냠렌 디다 상로 디데 문팀비기 차와란 주원디기 랑신기 피라야 아니 돔투게치 야지자다마다 연구여서레스로 당한주 디톨에 상제마다 남기 소소기 비기 아니 겨 토모메바니 콘데비 착당 기 아니 칸 제바 델야 베 당장 소리 당샤반자 먼저 냠는데 제투요 말았어. 더 디파치 까치니 믹스기 안 기우 담바도 뭐 댄샤비 담가 디톨에 상로단 아니 수수수 고자니 투치 니만을 지 조투와는 자지자다마 편도베요서레스로.
So the section invites us to think of the six perfections, to think of how they were enumerated as six, how the practices that we do, all of them are included or they're summed up in the practice of the six perfections from different perspectives. So if we think about this section, for us, it would constitute one of the best meditations that we can do, one of the best practices, in that our mind will become merged with the six perfections. And this is what we need. We need to make our mind become merged with the six perfections. Otherwise, if we don't think about it, and we will continue to act as we have done since time without beginning and up until now, giving way to anger and attachment and letting that affect our behavior, we will not make any change to the way that we have been progressing or living up until now. So this is what we know we will not be able to practice. So this is what we need to stop. And to stop it, we then listen to those instructions given to us by those great masters of the past, those great beings, and we think about them. We think about them daily. We contemplate them and also merge our mind with them daily, and from that great benefit will come.
그래서 난 네게 내 마치비 쟁기 딕소바 도망 캐시 디 눈이 개월 자두예비 shendun chemboris ro jeng tesi ani namgyu tembala soba sigmenya balam lamsang lengya bayna ani ta shen ani digba soya gi shilaya jodro yora ta ran digba sawa mase shen digba saya gi gyulaya jadro ganza ani nyeba chimbu shuchi ro ta dichi dom tu bayna ran shenni ga gyawala jowi gi ta gyom shishi chadro ganza 아니 셴데레스 디 셴데 약슈드레스 쳔보레스 라
And so Lamrim Tsongkhapa says in this section, since your patience prevents you from retaliating, then you then prevent others from accumulating a lot of bad actions. Inspired by that, they will then apply themselves to virtue. Thus, it is of great benefit to others. So this is also a really great explanation. So when we abstain from harming others, and also the basis of that harm, then not only, of course, we, it might be that someone else might be treating us roughly. So the physical expression might be hostile, or what they say is something that we find unpleasant. So rather than retaliating, if we abstain from harming others on the basis of that harm, not only it will be beneficial to ourselves, but this is also beneficial to others. This is the best way of being for the welfare of others, not only ourselves not behaving in a negative way, but also not causing others to create negativities.
다란드니 셰르기투 남드기 데와토바이나 대양 셈 이원레 몽비 셰르 야부즈미 something이 셈 냠버 샤디 미월라 제대로 돈도 데 네비 레론 톱고 대 레로친라 미기비 닌센 군도 망아베 송주 송급이 되는 대다기 쉬워스.
So next, Lamrim Tsongkhapa says, if your own welfare is to attain the happiness of liberation through the power of wisdom, this will not come with a distracted mind, and so you must place your mind in equipoise by means of meditative stabilization. Thus, it is necessary to achieve the suppleness of mind that abides on the observed object for as long as you wish.
대나 되니부터 드발라스 다 되니스 라운디 람된다 셴되니부터 어느 셴된다 람된니부터 드발라스 아니 친구 등에데스다 아니 버르치 뭐 두기다 냠낸 아니 녜데스 심진 튼라 랍점바 라 심진기 튼라 점발야 짐바디다 아니 네바 고비 수르니부디 아니 서비치그레스 동담면을 서비치 네슬라운디 셴니 트로와슬라운디 셰럽 시드제바 아니 람든 넘버 탐지 주제데스 동주
And so it says, since this does not arise in the lazy, you need to set about it with joyous effort, not relenting day or night. This is the basis for the other perfections. Therefore, in order to bring about the two welfares, the perfections are specified as 6. The element to the Mahayana Sutra says, great effort for the welfare of others is made by giving, not harming, and patience. So not harming, ethics. Abiding, which means calm abiding, shamatha, and liberation, attributed to wisdom, together with the basis, and actual welfare in all aspects.
늘 셴든 넘버 탐 제바 메토스 어디 가서 거나 늘 셴든 넘버 탐 제바 메토스 네당 조시 셈미벌라 네바 something이 락제다 코발리 조와 시럽이 락제수 송바 디니 소소체나 신엘라 항동도 메트로스.
So explaining that, Rinpoche says these components do not exhaust the means of securing the welfare of others in its entirety. In the statement abiding in liberation, in this verse, abiding in liberation together with the basis. So this statement, the mind abiding on the observed object is said to be the work of meditative stabilization, or more specifically, calm abiding. And liberation from cyclic existence is said to be the work of wisdom. When these two are differentiated, shamatha will not be mistaken for special insight.
딜라 셴든 넘버 탐제바 매도 세티 인지 시글라 갈겨도 디 다가란 롤 얘기돼. 지 딜레스란도 딜레 셴든 넘버 탐제바 매도 송바이나 다 진소 파신 쪽이 냠냠는 딜을 하가지 아니 셴든 치야지 간요 말에서 람나르와 진소 파신 쪽은 뒤츠지 달리기도
Yeah, dila not so intricate or dila the Geshe dila.
이거 말이든 딜단 디임바는 딜라 셴든 넘버 탐제바 매도슬라나
Some of the pageant to do you married and it's lagra.
딜람나타 저번인지 딜레고다
Geshe was wondering about the meaning of this line. These components do not exhaust the means of securing the welfare of others in its entirety. So there are a couple of ways that you can think about it. First of all, just looking at the way that it is expressed in Tibetan and looking at Tibetan spelling and grammar, it is possible that there is a misprint in the text, so one letter is left out, thereby if changing a little bit of the meaning. So if we add that letter, we could read it differently, which would be in the following way. These components, which means everything said by this verse, great effort for the welfare of being is made by giving, not harming, and patience, abiding, and liberation together with the basis, and act your own welfare in all aspects. You can also say that they also complete the welfare of others if we change one letter in the Tibetan text. Or an alternative meaning to that, if we don't change any reading of the text, is to say that when it says these components do not exhaust the means of securing the welfare of others in its entirety, as Geshe said before, since in Nagarjuna's text, the precious Galin, the Ratnavali, he mentions 7 perfections, and the last one he says is compassion, love. Then what you find in the verse is incomplete for securing the welfare of others, because you also need compassion to secure the welfare of others.
다 순번니스 토마르 산신 땅위 디 폼바셀 다디 기정페 송라라 툼비 담보 진비 담제토스 반덴다와 잡이 오만주고라야 산지 좀 된 뒤에 통 도자피 타와드 탐진kim비 살이야 티야기 탑시 될이야 아니 진비 담제슬라디 토마르 아니 좀 된 뒤에 콜이야 두고 그러왔어 좀 된 뒤에 살좀 코리아라야 아니 간전한 신기 직 사연 통해서는 직 맞잖아 hinguyo 말 메디 삼발 토마 비게 아니 진비기 다 롱주 진진네 아니 솔이야 아니 도야기 탑 나요라더라.
And so next is the number is specified from the point of view of the complete accomplishment of the welfare of others in all aspects. So again, the number of the perfections is set as 6 from the viewpoint of the complete accomplishment of the welfare of others, beginning with the perfection of generosity. And just as Chandrakirti said in his supplement to the Middle Way, when he spoke of the perfection of generosity, he says that human beings are looking for happiness, and our happiness depends upon resources. And therefore, the Muni, the Buddha, first off discoursed on generosity, gave teachings on generosity for bringing about the welfare of the happiness of others through having resources. So This is also a great point, an important point, to recognize that from generosity comes resources. And since we seek resources, our happiness or comfort, well-being depend upon resources. First off, the Buddha spoke of generosity.
Dinza bena danganzo bena Queensland nalo ya ani gaming gomba and talent gomba Sri Lanka gomba mambu dwara gomba to so ge numan leongi ge pila ya chik ani cha remake ni tela soba kala remake ni tela soba and dindi nangdo dindi nawal deni the mi mambu shuch ro chidang gi the gyurimbu ge pi ta komshi je yger de ne dindi tembi mi mambu shuch yo ani midozola ya dindi test chi te ondi gawo shuch ani sem nyebu shuch chane teni ani gombandele ya yani and korea ani gombandele ya shende piela soba robot chela soba be mambu yung do asra di sanji chomden di che pi che chedang dang tumba chi redo da ro
When you look at Chinese monasteries, Thai monasteries, Sri Lanka's temples, and so forth, there's a way that they engage, interact with the public. Sometimes they provide free meals, they offer tea or refreshments for the pilgrims or the students that come to those temples or centers. You can say that in one way, this is keeping up with the customs, the traditions that they become accustomed to for a very long time. But still, kind of in general, when you kind of look at that, it makes people happy, and they're then more inclined to come back again and again, support those places, make offerings, make donations, help out, and so forth. So when you think of this way of being involved with temples, monasteries, and so forth, that accords with Buddhist practice.
direda pachi tamatuna ani tsuyong sadi ko gyunde gi chunyi jirendo yongyam do asra pachi tamago tsujangjang leng sam tambai na ani tsuyong ya mejo chik di chago asres ro de ge de chi suyina ya sam chik ba isar.
So then if we can't give something away, if we can't give to others, we're not going to get something ourselves. This is, you can say, a natural occurrence. Sometimes we only want to be given, but we cannot give away to others. It is true and it is relevant either on a community level, but also on a personal level.
Re tomar sansin tamwe di pombasel denis simje kanla ya ne meche der mase tsunne ya sobachi ku chok chibi megyu zongju zamshins denili chok chewala dene ani gewala ya megyu gewala trubis ani zongju zamshin ani zongju yana bigita samden bezu chetu gras samden la dene zongju soji number chete neuron do sowana ani sherewala dene lebar shet te 태좀 제비 초월 집이 친루 등에 대해서 친루 등에 대해서 다란된 비기 친루 등에 대해서
And so in relation to the number of perfections being fixed as 6 from the viewpoint of the complete accomplishment of the welfare of others in all aspects, it says, at the outset, eliminate their poverty through material things. Following that, do not harm any sentient being whatsoever. Not only that, be patient when harmed. Since you are their companion, act with undaunted joyous effort. Relying on meditative stabilization, which is facilitated by undaunted joyous effort. So from joyous effort, we can practice absorption, meditative stabilization. So relying on meditative stabilization, fulfill the wishes through magical emanations and so forth. When they have become suitable vessels, offer them good explanations in reliance upon wisdom. Awesome.
Tadi six chilo and tambo mumpong watan number metsewata nam mumpong watan number metseta nam zota chavi mekyota Geshe labor job teacher jengi ten rangi ten knows.
So when they have become suitable vessels, offer them good explanations in reliance upon wisdom so that you liberate them by clearing up their doubts. This is why the perfections are specified as 6, and the ornament for the Mahayana Sutras provides this scriptural citation for that. The welfare of others is also your own welfare when you are unstinting, cause no harm to others, are patient when harmed, are not thwarted by what is to be done, and are joyous and well-spoken.
Tadi resha tara ganglaya karsonre ramdun ni shervgi tu namdrugi devatoba tilata ramdun shagris chiksong ros ra teni nganzu sajje thangbu koranlaya pigi ten tetawe chansum ki chobo labanas chansum ki chawala ni yores ramdan shenki tuyantroba
The Ganga Dwembe.
ngo thangbu ngani shogi thangbu loksadi
Mm.
randa shenki tuyani yores
Mm.
ta randa shenki tuyani yobe nani ta randun di ta shendun chea di zu randun la tuk yores rangi nyumumba da shiji driba le choba la ya chobi dewa toba la ya ani shendun samgo gores ta rangi pigi ta nyumumba le chorni ani dewa toba di ani sherab la ra le gores sherab yakbu chiyongya di ani jinso phashin ani tambunga ki nyamne la ya ra le gores inza dindri wandu chiyong di ani jinso phashin chuk ngetsul di ani samul dindri tango yasare ra.
We started a session today with the statement in the text that says that when we practice the Bodhisattva conduct, when we train in the Bodhisattva conduct, we train in 2 activities. We train in those that bring about the welfare of ourselves and those that bring the welfare of others. And so for our own welfare, we develop wisdom that can eliminate the 2 sets of obscurations, cognitive obscurations and afflictive obscurations. But for that to occur, we need also an altruistic intention. For the development of wisdom, which eliminates our own obscurations, we need to have to develop an altruistic intention to wish to be of benefit to others. So then when we think of the 5 perfections that precede wisdom, well, they're involved with the welfare of others. They are required for generating wisdom for our own welfare.
Shivani longju nipa la mechashi, manipa tuandu mingibi longju la metawa dans. Te yona papa son nubi, Tsultrim lenji, te la kuba tang. Simjen tang, simjen mayimba la teni jongi dungar la subi mukyo watang. Gewi chawa chimtra la joryan trovi ti mukyo watang. Shinde dal hangdongi nanjur metaba gomba trukinis the jinso pashi trukdira di drovi tikchen tamchi dula teda kyang chindugi rimba druchi tele mawa mugu vichete loncho ngombar megawata rabgu nila megota nenjo namba metaba tikchen tada nir seto shesonsos.
And the 4th explanation, explaining why the number of perfection is set as 6, says that it is specified from the viewpoint of their comprising the entire Mahayana. You will not be attached to welfare you have acquired, and you will not view wealth that you have not acquired with interest. When that is present, you will be able to guard the trainings whereby you will take up ethics and respect them. You will not be discouraged because you have patience with suffering caused by sentient beings and non-sentient phenomena. You will apply yourself to and delight in any kind of virtuous activities, and you will not be discouraged by them. You will cultivate the non-conceptual yoga of shamatha and special insight. These six encompass all Mahayana practices, which you arrive at through the six. They are sequentially accomplished through the six perfections, and nothing more than those six is necessary. Again, the ornament for the Mahayana Sutra says, all Mahayana is merely this: taking no joy in wealth, having highest respect for ethics, not being discouraged regarding the two, and non-conceptual yoga.
The chanju sembi chobares, chanju sembi chobares laundia, some dance chikariors laundi, chanju semba chayalea cargores, chanju semba chani chobola lavalea, jeso passion to the lavgores. The chanju semba chayala cari chagan cargos, and it seven inch chambo, pig, juma maimbachi, gulaki on the 아니 잔죽 릭세세 대버침비 릭세세 디차고로스 딘자 아니 저인지 전부 뒤에 꼴롱라이샤 디 꼴랑비 잔주셈 디 남기바나 아니 잔주셈 차와레스 다 드니 잔주셈기 냠랜디 가르치고레스 다 잔주셈 차니 심전 탐지기 된비 쌈비 아니 로치마 마이바 다 잔주셈 차서로 다 드니 가르치고 그랬을디 다 준소 파신 툴 라얄니 라가요 마레스 인즈 준소 파신 툴 등에 세디 딘디 온도 전에 송구여스라나 야 섬단사도 아스라.
And so we can think about it in the following way. Here, this section explains the bodhisattva conduct, the bodhisattva practices. So what do we need in order to practice the bodhisattva conduct, the bodhisattva practices? Well, we need to practice the six perfections. Then what makes them become the bodhisattva practices? What do we need then to become bodhisattvas? Well, to become bodhisattvas, first off, we need to develop great compassionate love. To develop great compassionate love is to awaken our Mahayana lineage, a Mahayana family. So we first off need to develop great compassionate love, which becomes the root, the very foundation for developing the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta. And so when bodhicitta becomes uncontrived, and uncontrived bodhicitta, we then become bodhisattvas. What do we need to do once we become bodhisattvas? Well, once we become bodhisattvas, we practice the six perfections. There's nothing that falls outside of the six perfections in terms of what we need to practice.
Tirda di ngichoro shego mardas rangarangara bi samtansaji enyitanro shivjachin ngarangara shivjachin shal dena di nito samtanro pigi kanji samtan chiwa tilaya trilens to sen dedi semba givu dasro che sen das kanji sem giya sem givu yong yak chedro sidi pe givu yorsro.
And so speaking about it like that, it's not that Geshe is pointing his finger at you and saying that this is what you guys need to do or what we need to do. Geshe said that this is also something, personally, on a personal level. So then you think about this explanation, which is presented in the form of questions and answers. So you think about this material, you can sit at home, you can sit in your room, and you think about those issues. You ask a question and then you find those reasons that such as the ones that we employ here in order to provide answers. It makes contemplation makes your mind happy. There's a certain happiness or comfort that arises in the mind when you understand those points. And in terms of mind generation, right? So this is a term that we sometimes use, mind generation. Well, part of mind generation is developing a mind that is happy, and happiness, well-being comes also from contemplating those issues.
So that the tolaya some sem shani ani samlo tang tu ba na tindi samlo kha zu tang bi ring le ya chakdang kesa ro ji de yo ma res ro penang anzu ji me ji ge dang to le ya ani penju so dang to le ya chong ja da tindi ji le samlo ji tang se be je le ya chakdang ji me na yong ya me gyo ro ji re do se ro tan di ji le samlo dang ni won di chakdang gi lo di kon di par le ya rosa koro yo ma res ro kunzu di sanga jasa kora me gyo ro di cha won di chakdang gi wang gi lesa lele ten bi ta ji draman di bi ta dunga nyon de sam lo ta ga ro se di ya gu jin zen do asra.
So we think about it, and when we think about it over time, there is no room for attachment and anger to arise. We rid ourselves of anger and attachment in the sense that there is no space for them to rush up and develop in our mind. So looking at the things that we are mostly invested in our life. So if we invested in gathering possession of wealth, money, and so forth, without anger or attachment, without attachment and anger, it will not come about. But then when we think about those issues, the ones that the points that we have spoken of today and previously, then there would be no avenue for anger and attachment to arise. So normally when we go about our daily life, when we don't think about those points, and anger and attachment do arise, then they arise in our mind from ignorance. There arise anger and attachment, under the force of which we perform actions that result in birth in samsara and all the other sufferings affiliated with that. So Chris was asking, what does it refer to when it says fulfill the wishes by magical emanations and so forth? Dila dingunla koi troje be mikyo tsunru tsamshin something like ten zunru sok yi dumba che sajlo di sumbala di zunru sok sajlo zunru sok se di tunda karinas
zunru sok
ma zunru tila something like that
ta zunru dang ani nupa dang top dang ani namje la soba ani tsama ani yigsun dumba chigres ro tila warada
이 쿠란에 쿠란 페이지 치워서 디 좀조디 튼더 카베이나스 페이지 디 페이지 디 소바지
zunru dita zunru yakshu di samden la teni tomba ni ngonsum topic ishi ji legros ta di zunru res.
And so Chris was referring to magical elimination, the term magical elimination. It came up maybe in one of the previous sections. Anyway, it was said in Tibetan that when you train in absorption, which is based on undertaking joyous effort, you can attain miraculous powers and so forth. So miraculous powers, ability, discerning wisdom and so forth. You have special kind of forces or powers. What it mainly refers to is this incredible part that the mind finds when you develop a single pointed concentration, which is placed on emptiness. So when you think of, rather than thinking about it as sending forth magical emanation, the mind becomes so focused and so powerful. The actual magic, you could say, is in a mind that is single-pointedly placed on emptiness.
Namgyu medeji nyebayna juntudoji zigorasra. Pena nganzu miji namlam purdun rosuwana da kola juntu shiudu slavji mezo hansangras. Kansan nganzu purtugo mara. Pena chiuji 비 공간안에 수퇴니 니만 있으면 고구마다 풀어도 알아. 걔는 항상 그거 말이 네 제가 인기 준출이래도 알아.
Often we regard something that is kind of a magical power to be something that doesn't exist for most people or for no one. Having something like that is like a magical power. If you think of, for example, ourselves as human beings being able to fly, that would be a magical power. For birds, it's not a magical power. A young hatchling hatches from an egg, and within a few days, they can fly. We don't think about it as a magical power, do we?
Is something 비 the thing is same parts of chamajuji bigita mix a chila mini and it's same the tembu chound the tea togi and it's same the sivu shuch tembu shuch chound and it's same sivu the tembu togi and it lu yangbu sech chagores that tea togi and it nankala portugala soba and it tea togi har thong manyowe yuldoso the tagrimbu any and so tone to yala soba and do some juntry shegores juntry one shis ro this tombani on some to be ishi the yakshudi tombani on some to be ishi tres juntry one juntry is that tombani on some to on the and di gom to ji and choju java said and chibigi and sharsi yala soba and jet to yala soba this summer in Gores, sometimes in to share to yellow soba. Some in Gores, and don't really actually did it was raw.
And so particularly here, when we look at the meaning of developing absorption, well, it is developing an absorption, which is a single pointed concentration, which when developed, it makes one's body and mind become very supple. The body and mind become supple. They become very light. The body becomes very light. So then thinking of, for example, things such as being able to fly in the sky with a body that is so light, that could be a magical power. But particularly when we develop this concentration, a shamatha concentration, in which the mind is single-pointedly concentrated without any sense of distraction, and it is completely at will, and even more so when it is then used for the realization of emptiness. When it perceptually realizes emptiness, then you gain those powers of mind. Like, for example, you have the ability to see things or to understand matters, affairs which are far away from you. So you can call it maybe a far-reaching sight, but also you have those powers of mind in which you can see Buddhas, you can hear teachings of Buddhas, you can turn every being as being close to your heart. So if you think about these are those strong magical powers to be able to see Buddhas face to face, to turn everyone to be close to your heart. Those are magical powers.
Same di bena nganzo mashikon mijiki and sozo ya kyabana yang takchu yores. Miti shit savijelam pombo di ya kyaya da jigo soda mashikon ya kyaya nimodi mashikon ya kyaya di lela yores. Shita di jigo sa Bena danganzo shito jion di any go di kapdu shamadon go di jigo sa shu surgri segda di ngade shito de chimanyo de god pe jigo sa chagar segda kaza ani namshi kanji nganzo shito jion di namshi di sem di ge ta lu phi ta chi lo da ma sona gasha mo shu ji tang ro goras di chi di lu de ranshin gi pe ani jigo sa chaya chi tila soba ta kanji 아니 샘 기토니 아니 루츠 랜다 루토르타 다딘디 마무 쇼지 송고도 디즈 베 얌생부르 저르스라.
And so when we're alive, before the process of dying, kicks in, then there's nothing so astonishing in using the mind in order to move parts of the body, in order to raise some parts of the body. So, for example, you lie down in bed, and you can think of lifting your limbs or your head and so forth. There's nothing incredible with that. Of course, if that happens after death, that's incredible. But what about in the process of dying, when the body loses quite a lot of its strength and energy and power? It becomes sometimes so difficult for us even to raise our head. So we are lying down in bed, and to lift our head would be would require a lot of energy. And so we reach that state in which you can say that we have a mind that is still in the body, but its ability to exert control over the body is diminished to a great extent. We lose quite a lot of percentage of ability for the mind to be used in the body. But then when we think of developing this single-pointed concentration, which is then used for realizing emptiness, turning that to be a perception realization of emptiness, we gain control over the mind, in which we can deliberately in a certain process, we can take a breath, which means that we can take a body at will, and also we can cast it away, or we can discard it at will. Currently, a process of birth and death occur without any sense of control. But with wielding power of the mind, we can also control that process of birth and death. So let's leave the text here for today. We will finish off with making the final Lamrim prayer. For my two collections, vast is space, that have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time. May I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds' wisdom eyes blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all lives, my children. May I find the best of complete graded parts of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path that I've discerned them. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time, with my heart going up with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined. May I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted back to his peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by even this graded path of enlightenment completed due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of the lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtues practices, may you always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. Thank you.